So let's
Very
start
interesting.
from the beginning of that. Like, give us the third grade level of what that entails, and then let's work our way from there.
Sure, sure. You mean picking high ROI AI projects or
Just
something?
like what as far as the artificial intelligence, like just break it down exact, like kind of what you do
Yeah, yeah,
or
great.
where you start.
Buckle up. It's the Insurance Dudes Podcast.
Boom!
Boom.
And we're in.
We are here. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I like the starting off note here, guys. I'm feeling the energy on this.
It's for our editor, so he knows. That's our instead of the Hollywood.
Yeah, the snap. You just hit him
Yeah.
with the
With the
beginning
bow.
of the CA dance.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Settle.
that you're going to start seeing that in Hollywood on all the movies.
I could
Instead
be
of
catching on. I'm not gonna lie. Some of those guys must watch this thing.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Hopefully the right
Dan,
one.
how do you pronounce your last name, man?
It's Faggella. Faggella. Yeah.
Nice, Faggella.
You can mess it up if you want. I don't.
It's a Faggella.
Yeah. I tell people, I say it's one of those nice long Irish names.
Yeah.
And people, and most people, like
huh?
70% will be like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then 30% of people will laugh. So you guys are in the minority. So that's good.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good though. 30% positive reaction. That's not bad.
Yeah, if I had those kind of hit rates in college, man, I would have been happy.
Yeah. Or a baseball Hall of Famer. So
Exactly.
there you go.
Yeah. So I mean,
Well, so exactly. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're not an insurance dude, which is awesome. Oh,
Craig, you're forgetting
Shiza.
something.
Shiza.
Dan, we always like to do an icebreaker.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
First
do an
one this
icebreaker.
year. I'm sitting in the living room right now. Let's guess what 80s sitcom this is from. 80s.
80s, yeah. See, I saw it and I was like, is that the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air background? But I was born in like the very end of the 80s, and so I'm less schooled on these matters, and I also don't watch that much television. But I can take some stabs. I mean, I'm literally going to pull names out of nowhere, like I don't know.
It would be amazing if you just guessed.
Yeah. I literally. I mean, I'm going to be like saying just random stuff, like
Just do,
Seinfeld,
yeah.
the 90s. I'm afraid I'm drawing blanks here. I mean, the Cosby Show or the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is literally all I have, but it's probably neither, and so I can accept the
I don't
loss.
even know if I have this one.
I know
Have
this
I-
is such a tough one.
It's not
You
Ricky
know.
Schroeder.
Oh,
Silver
so close, Mr. Craig.
Spoons. If I'm on the right track, is it it's a big family.
It is. And there were some
Oh.
pains in
Growing
that family.
Pains.
There you go.
Growing Pains. A great show. Just a great
Great
show.
show. All right, let's get into this, Dan. Dan, tell us a little bit of your background, what you do, how you got here, and did you get bumped and bruised on the way?
And feel free to be artificially intelligent about it.
Yeah. I did get bumped and bruised along the way. So, when I was 20, I started a mixed martial arts gym because I didn't want to have a job. I mean, my friends were either delivering pizzas or selling insurance, both of which seemed like a pretty bad idea. And I didn't want to have a job, and so the martial arts gym I was teaching at went bankrupt because that's what most of them do. So I started one that didn't, as it turns out, and I grew it and ran it and sold it 4 years later. But it paid for graduate school at UPenn. I studied skill development and skill acquisition at UPenn. I wanted to learn how to train fighters. How do we learn faster? So one of these kind of nerds who's also out there competing, winning national championships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, was trying to kind of keep a foot on both of those domains. By the time I got out of UPenn, I had been tapped on the shoulder by some of the folks in computer science, and it was the same building as the Wharton School where I went at University of Pennsylvania for grad school. And they were saying, hey, you're doing all this stuff with human learning. They got machines doing some pretty cool stuff now too. So I was learning, the neuroscience and sort of the neural correlates to what learning actually is, and this very rough analogy to how that's being done in computers. This is the early days of ImageNet and when computer vision was starting to get very impressive. And by the time I graduated, 2011, I was pretty well convinced that AI was going to be something I need to stay on top of. So I grew and sold a totally separate e-commerce business after I got out of grad school. But the whole time I was doing interviews, research, and speaking about the future and impact of AI, and essentially have been on that path for the last 8 or 9 years. And so about 4 years ago-ish, I went full-time on what is now Emerge Artificial Intelligence Research, where we help big enterprise companies build AI strategies and pick high ROI AI projects. And insurance and banking are the two big sectors that we serve primarily.
Wow. So let's start from the beginning of that. Like, give us the third grade level of what that entails, and then let's work our way from there.
Sure. You mean picking high ROI AI projects, or
just
something
like what as far as the artificial intelligence, like just break it down like kind of what you do.
Yeah, great.
Or where you started.
So easiest way to think about Emerge is we're like a very boutique Forrester or Gartner, but with one singular focus, and that's the return on investment of AI, mostly in financial services. Doing my best to get into defense as well. I really believe that's an interesting space. I've done a lot of speaking for the United Nations and for Interpol on topics around AI and defense in Geneva, New York, and elsewise. But business-wise, it's primarily financial services. So what does that mean? We essentially survey the landscape of the totality of AI vendors in financial services. So let's use insurance. We got a very big client. We just wrapped up a project with a firm outside of Sacramento, like $5 billion company in the insurance space. They also have sort of a retail wing as well, but it's primarily insurance. We map the entire landscape of AI vendors that sell into insurance, and we break them down by what kind of capabilities they enable, what business processes they impact, and then we use our proprietary scores to sort their evidence of ROI, their ease of deployment, their evidence of traction. And then we also look at the enterprise side. So we look at the big guys, the ones who are adopting this stuff, and we get a sense of what are the known investments. How far along are these investments? And go ahead and get on the phone with some of these folks and bring them onto our podcast. We run a show called AI in Business, where we have folks like the former head of AI at HSBC. We have an episode that's going to be going live with the head of AI at US Bank, head of core machine learning at Facebook. So we do the primary research as well. So secondary and primary research together with the client's goals, and we can actually lay out where the heck we should be putting our money when it comes to building an AI foundation and delivering results. So data, research, advisory, that's what we deliver, much like a Forrester or a Gartner, but with one focus.
Wow. So you go in and you can survey the landscape for them and know where they should be going, where they have gone, the opportunities, the strengths, the weaknesses, and all that stuff?
Yeah, essentially. So we'll get an understanding of kind of their level of AI talent in-house, level of AI understanding at kind of an executive level, their current initiatives and thrusts. Often AI is not going to steer a company in a new direction. What we're going to have to do with AI, if it's important for them to adopt it, we're going to recommend where we would say to use it or not. But often we're going to be riding an existing strategic initiative, 3 to 5 year goals, key thrusts that are already happening within the business, things that they're already really married to as their real differentiators that they think are going to win market share moving forward. We're often not going to use first pilot AI projects to take them off that path. We're going to say, what's going to enhance those established goals that already we're committed to and that AI will inevitably be part of 5, 6 years into the future? Where can we start that now? So it's customized to them, but much of what we do for market research is going to be the same approach in almost any industry to get the data. But how do you apply that data? Well, you got to be working hand in hand with heads of innovation, heads of strategy, and that's who those are our customers in this space.
Well, so the insurance space has been historically pretty slow moving with technology.
Yep.
And a lot of legacy systems, these huge databases with all this other information that we don't understand. And like, how do you see this industry moving towards these hotter, newer, faster technologies going down the road? And how will that affect and benefit the agents? So the guys with the boots on the floor.
Yeah. So there's a lot of considerations here. You're right that insurance is a little slower, but it's certainly not sort of the stodgiest sector in the world. Manufacturing is going to trail insurance by a wide margin in terms of broad industry-wide adoption in, let's say, the North American market, for example. Insurance is certainly behind banking. So Citibank is going to be doing more than Geico by leaps and bounds. But insurance has, I think, the benefit to some degree of being really the original big data business. Who prior to them was using statistical methods to sort of base such the crux of their business, the very crux of their business, on statistical methods. And so being able to come up with those, iterate on those, bake them into a business that would be sustainable and scalable, insurance has that edge. Right now, where the money is going is primarily in claims and in underwriting when it comes to insurance. So again, our flagship service is called the AI Opportunity Landscape. So the opportunity landscape as of 2020 for insurance, kind of been this way since 2018, but more and more so, is primarily most of the industry traction and most of the venture fundraising and most of the sort of greatest sort of evidence of something that's not going away are the business transformations in the claim side of the house and the insurance, or the underwriting side of the house. Customer service, not so much. Marketing and sales, almost nothing. And there's other parts of the business, but most of the action is in those two.
And how does that affect the agent?
Yeah, the guy out selling in the street is not going to be using AI anytime soon. So how it affects the agent today is the following. As this technology makes its way into big business. So if you're an agent at a 20-person company, again, you're not going to be using AI tools anytime soon. It might be 5 years before there's really robust AI capability in day-to-day insurance small guy software. It's just not going to be in your hands. However, the tip that it's making, the tilt, the slant that's adding to the market writ large, is that the bottom of the market, the more high volume, lower price things, let's say car insurance, mortgages, mortgages for super millionaires, right? Things that don't involve a lot of hands-on are going to be increasingly automatable and increasingly done better or more accurately by AI systems informed by actuaries or professionals, as opposed to just by those boots on the ground people. So the folks who are the agents, I would say if you're looking to sell your agency in 3 years, I probably wouldn't tell you to do anything different. If you're looking to get big and get bought at some point, if you're looking to run this thing for a long time and really compete with some of the bigger established players, moving up market is kind of the place to be if you're an agent, sort of across the board. So finding niches that are not high volume and that are not high frequency, or just working with very bespoke big ticket stuff. Those people are going to be safe. The people at the bottom are going to be less so.
I love that. I love that because that has been a big discussion within the insurance agent world, especially over the last, let's say 10 years, is that, the internet's going to take over. You know what I mean? A very dumbed down version of what you're talking about. But I think that is a threat that a lot of the agent force does get worried about. But to your point, I think that when any kind of technology does come in, it's pivotable, right? Everything's pivotable. And I think that you're 100% right on that if people just don't niche down, like they're just doing whatever, I think those are the vulnerable people, where those are some good strategies. Niche down, the higher level, that's great, and that even pays more. So it's like spend time on really honing those skills in.
Yeah, there's going to be places like if you're in North Dakota, maybe you could get away with the next 7 years of business as usual, maybe 5 or something, because it's just folks who don't really understand the interwebs, and they want to shake hands with a guy with a briefcase for completely illogical monkey level reasons, sort of no actual rationale at all. So if you run 6 car dealerships, then you probably do want a relationship with somebody. You want to really understand your risks here, and you want to understand the range of products, and you want to have enough personal kind of tension with that person to really guide you in the right direction and not encourage you to buy things you don't need. Be able to sort of help you with other kinds of decisions, legally, insurance-wise, whatever, kind of inform your business strategy at large, because it's such a big deal. But if you're just getting car insurance on your pickup truck, more and more of folks are moving towards it. So the analogy that I use is in the domain of wealth management. So I was in Citibank headquarters 4 months ago. One of our research advisors is a C-level fella in the sort of markets and security services side of Citibank. And there's a lot of talk in that world, and certainly in the startup world as well, around moving to robo-advisors. So, are 60-year-old people moving en masse to robo-advisors? Definitely not. But an increasing percentage of all wealth is pretty comfortable to go there so long as their needs aren't that complicated. They don't want to pay an extra percent just because the guy can smile and send you an email to buy Disney, because that guy at Edward Jones makes money when you buy Disney, and screw that. The same thing with insurance. Is it everybody? No. Some people are going to want a handshake and a suitcase. But more and more of the market is moving in that direction. So you have technology that's going to handle the automation, and you also have user interfaces people are just going to prefer to use rather than having to sit next to somebody. And I think that these are tension forces that really are going to force the small folks to, think about differentiating other than, well, we can do what all the big guys can do. We're just lucky we were here in Nebraska, because by golly, we can shake some hands.
Right. Super interesting. Craig, do you have anything else that you? Yeah.
Well, so as an agent, what are I know we can niche down, right? So an independent agent, and then you have captive agents. Both of us being captive carriers. So the options to, the market appetite for a lot of captive carriers is more limited, and the focus may be on that home, that auto, and these clients that are in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So what are the kind of strategies that those agents can do to increase? Do they need to grow? I mean, do you have to have a larger size book in order to stay in this arena?
Yeah. So again, I have very little experience selling insurance. In fact,
Sure.
I would be most honest by telling you I have zero. So my experience is speaking to heads of innovation and heads of strategy.
Gotcha.
Deploying large sums of money to make large impacts in companies. So I don't know what it's like to carry a briefcase.
Yeah.
But what I'll tell you in terms of just looking at the trends, so from the vantage point from which I stand, and I would purport to have none other, I would say that moving up market would be the name of the game. So if you're going to sell, home and whatever, I mean, auto insurance is, I don't really know as much, but I would just say move up market as much as you can would be the safest bet, because there are folks who, by reason alone, really do require some kind of guidance around how they're protecting and managing assets. So even if you don't have the freedom to get into some niche like, marine or, construction equipment, or there's all kinds of interesting, financing and insurance niches, there's still the ability to work with the high rollers and then to get in with those networks. So who else runs a bunch of restaurants that you could get in with? It's better
Sure.
than, who else has 2 kids that are eventually going to go to college? Like, it's just better. It's just better to know who else has 6 restaurants. Right? It's just better. So again, without living that life, I would say that I would certainly sleep better at night knowing the meta trends if I was moving closer to that direction a little bit every year than if I was kind of staying in the lower tier there.
Interesting. So in your right at the beginning, when you were going through your background, you talked about you said I created a company and then sold it, and it was very quick. You just plugged it right in the middle. But I'm curious what company that was.
Sure. Yeah. So here's again, a little bit of an odd story, but so I was running a martial arts business that was only about a $250,000 a year company by the time I sold it. I'm in a town of 4,000 people, Wakefield, Rhode Island. So now I'm in the Boston area, where obviously, tech is a bigger deal. This is the kind of one of the academic hubs for AI. I can zip right out and get to Europe. East Coast in Europe is where our clients are, so it makes sense. But I grew up in Rhode Island, so the state down below, 4,000 people, very small shebang there. But I did a lot of competing, and I taught a lot of seminars. I mean, I taught seminars in Rio de Janeiro. I taught seminars in the Midwest. I taught seminars up and down the East Coast. And I also won a lot of interesting tournaments. So if you go onto Google and you type in Dan Faggella versus the Giant, you're going to see me versus a UFC fighter. The guy's name is Pat Walsh. So Pat Walsh walks around at like 220 or something. I walk around at like $124. So I'm a very small fella, but I shattered this guy's ankle, like viciously shattered this guy's ankle in like 12 seconds into this match. And that video is still up online. That video actually got a lot of attention. And this is, 9 years ago, got a lot of attention. People wanted to know what the hell was going on. And I started to build an email list. I said, well, maybe I'll show these people my seminar footage and I'll see if I can kind of build an email list. So I did. And as it turns out, I built a pretty big email list, and I started offering DVDs. I was just burning them myself. I was just burning them on my own laptop. So I was just sitting there and burning DVDs all day, and that didn't end up being sustainable. So I got a 5-burner, and then eventually we got a warehouse. But that expanded into a business called Science of Skill. So this was a $2 million e-commerce company that I grew over the course of 4 years. We got into the Inc. 5000. I sold to a group of a buyer group in the Midwest that owned a couple SaaS companies selling to government. So they liked recurring revenue, but they were also guys that were really into self-defense and self-protection. So by that point, we had instructors from, Marine Corps scout snipers to military knife defense experts and all kinds of cool folks teaching on this platform. And it was an interesting little recurring revenue company. And the sale of that business was the initial funding for me to be able to get full-time into this and focus on, involvement at the United Nations and involvement in the policy world, and then also research products for bigger clients. So that was kind of what allowed me to do what I'm doing now, so to speak.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is so freaking interesting because you never know where it's going to end up taking you, where it's going to lead. And you have to be able to wiggle and waggle, because a lot of things can change it constantly, right? But how fun, like when you were burning CDs, you had no idea you're going to have these military experts, right?
No clue. I literally, at some point we just realized I couldn't get beyond 40. I was hitting 40 grand a month as like my cap. Like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu market is just small. So I was just hitting it. And I was also realizing no one's going to want to buy this thing if I'm the only expert and I'm trying to sell it. I've got the black belt. I've got the tournament wins. I can hold it down, but I can't be the face. So we said, what if we broadened it out to other areas of self-defense, just because it was the most logical thing to do. And then I, made calls and created new courses and sold new products and eventually sold the business, which was the goal all along. The whole time I was doing that was, 80 hours of my week. I was chipping away doing TED Talks about AI. I was chipping away doing interviews at, again, Facebook headquarters, et cetera. I lived in the Bay Area for a short time before I sold this company. I was getting as involved in AI as I could, but I didn't have a firm business model. I know ultimately I wanted to affect global policy. Ultimately, I wanted to really impact business change. But how did I want to pull that off? I wasn't sure. And so I instead of taking a random stab and not really delivering value, I decided, well, I'll get this thing big enough to sell it, and then I'll get, to bring employees on board and really build something that I can be proud of and carry forward. And that's what we've done.
Keep leveling up.
Love it.
Were you selling online? E-commerce is so
100%. Yeah, email lists, banner ads. Not really into
funnels.
Paper. I never got into that. Yeah, a ton of that. Yeah, so
funnels with the upsells.
It was mostly email segmentation, though. Really, email marketing and email segmentation was the name of the game for that company, and that's what carried it to 7 figures and got her sold.
Yeah,
love
email lists are gold.
Yeah, no, big time. That's a critical lesson. That's any business I ever run, for sure. There's a lot to be said of that.
So this is so off the insurance subject. 2 things that you said earlier. One is defense. I would love to know your take on defense, and then I'd also like to know there's a lot of older insurance agents that have kids. Getting into AI is incredibly smart, considering where we're going as a culture.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know your thoughts on how can somebody that's just like, I don't even know where to start with AI. I'd love to get my kid into it or me to change careers. That is one question. The other one would be, I would love to know your take on self-defense and AI.
Well, when I said defense, I meant like the Pentagon. I have very little interest in being involved in the self-defense market. It's paltry and nominal and not interesting to me at all. But
that's
the
what I meant.
Is of exceedingly high interest to me, particularly with China tensions and the trembling fall of the West. In the current circumstance that we're in. So so I'll talk on the career side first. I think there's I don't pressure people to get involved technically with AI if it isn't to their liking. So if you have a kid who really has a propensity towards programming or has a genuine interest therein, I think it can be a great skill. I think that if I was introduced to programming at an earlier age, I might have done that instead of learning to choke people. And who knows where my career would be there. I would have prettier ears. I might not be in as good of a shape, but I would have much prettier ears, no cauliflower ear, and I might know how to code something. So I think introduction to that early on is great. But the fact of the matter is, for folks pivoting their career later, there's actually a huge amount of value in understanding conceptually how AI works, understanding the range of AI use cases, and being able to kind of communicate and be the bridge between the data scientists and the subject matter experts to find the actual fit in the business. As it turns out, that is harder and more rare than having a master's or a PhD in computer science or AI. It's harder and more rare to actually conceptually have a grasp of what can AI do, what are its limitations, what are its opportunities, what are the range of use cases, and where do we find that business click? What kind of data are we going to need? What kind of teams are we going to, what kind of folks are we going to have to bring onto our cross-functional team to make this happen? What sort of strategic thinking ahead of time are we going to need to do to see if that conversational flow is even something that we can expect to get to with AI? Which of these vendors are hype? Which of them aren't? I can write a bit of code. I passed Andrew Ng's AI course on Coursera a while back just to get the conceptual grasp. But if you asked me to code something that I would have to use in my business, I would say, no, I'm going to pay somebody to do that. So what I would say around career is, for kids, I think it's great to introduce them to programming early. I think it's only going to be more and more relevant. I think it would have been really cool if I was introduced to that as well. But later in career, folks who can really get a conceptual grasp, I think, can be that bridge without having to pivot their brain into being now a programmer, which is a very different shift if you're a salesperson or, an inventory manager or whatever it is, but instead be the person who can be the bridge. Those folks, frankly, are even more valuable. So I tend to recommend people do that unless they really want to learn how to code and make such a hard pivot.
Love it. Love it. That is great advice. And then I'd love to know more about how you think AI in defense, especially, you're right, in this climate. Very interesting. Very interesting.
It's a wild world. If you guys ever come up with a 5-hour long podcast around the AI race between the U.S. and China and the relative advantages therein, invite me on for sure. So long as I have like a snack to eat somewhere in the middle of it, I'll just keep going.
Maybe a catheter.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, it's a really fascinating topic. I think it's cool that you've asked. Right now, I think a lot of folks presume when they hear AI in the military, they presume we're mostly talking about, making our drones more autonomous so they can fly or something, or making our tanks autonomous or something like this, like physical equipment. There is definitely some interesting traction and progress that can be made there, but a lot of it really is around intelligence. So if we have satellite feeds, if we have live video from drones, if we have social media and online forums and communication data, can we find patterns there, determine what activities might be happening there, and determine where we want to potentially deploy resources? So really, intelligence is a lot of the name of the game. Now, missile systems, et cetera, we've interviewed the head of AI at Raytheon. I'm in talks with the Boeing guy. I think he doesn't want to come on the show because they just had that big crash or whatever that flew. That kind of. I wasn't going to ask him about that, but I think their PR people are really, you get serious babysitters for when you try to interview the head of AI, you got to go through a bunch of serious babysitters, and I think the babysitters are saying don't talk about anything right now. But anyway, so we're in that space, and there's interesting traction there: missile systems, autonomous vehicles, etc. But most of it is really in intel, making the most of text and vision data and being able to use that to sort of predict activities. I think China kind of has the right strategy in that they're not putting things that can rust all around the world. Instead, they're just kind of building their digital tendrils, which are all plausibly deniable. And I think, honestly, if you're smart in today's day and age, it's not the Cold War anymore. I think that's the game to play. And that's also where a lot of the traction is today.
Interesting. Yeah, that
Who's
that
winning
makes
that game?
a lot of sense.
To be continued, I guess. We'll see where the economy lands and where America lands, 6 months, 12 months from now, and also where China lands, I suppose. But I think in terms of an overall strategy, I've written an article called "The 7 Weaknesses of the West." You can type in EMERJ, that's our website, Emerge 7 Weaknesses of the West. And I have an article around where I think China's sort of ahead of the ahead of the curve on that. I'm happy to put that in the show notes. We've also got some really
Yeah,
great
let's do
stuff
that.
on insurance. I should make sure your audience is happy. So we've got
sure.
two really good pieces. I mean, we have probably, I have 40 pieces that have to do with insurance, but I have two in particular about kind of bigger trends across the insurance landscape that I think would be really cool for your audience. But as for the China thing, that particular article is entirely my words and my own research and perspective after I gave a talk in Shanghai for the UN, and I got to interview some of the startups in that ecosystem and did more digging about how connected the private sector is with the public sector in China. And I think we have a lot to worry about, frankly. Not to make anybody nervous, but I think we do. So yeah.
No, it's good to have these talks, and it's good to be open about it. And everybody does have different opinions, but like, especially coming from somebody like you, it's very important to know realistically, these things. I mean, nobody should be behind closed doors. I mean, that's.
Yeah. I think speaking frankly about the dynamics and the state of affairs, I'm certainly not wishing for tension between the U.S. and China. I think it's just I'm observing what I'm observing. There's some things I'm nervous about. Other people have other perspectives. I kind of come from the AI first side, which is not necessarily. It doesn't make me a diplomat, but it does give me a take. So anyway, yeah, that's where we are there, in my opinion.
Love it. Wow. Mind blown. I didn't know that this conversation would go in so many different directions.
Me neither, frankly.
I love it, man. It's like, if we could do this for 10 hours and I'd be stoked. Craig, do you have anything else insurance related that you wanted to ask Dan?
I'm sitting here mind blown right now. I'm at a loss for words, which is usually not the case.
Yeah,
but it's awesome.
You guys,
I'm reading
for being pretty talkative.
Yeah, I'm reading a book called Singularity. Have you heard of it?
Are you talking about Ray Kurzweil's Singularity is Near? Or
maybe,
what?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the five different phases of technology, and then singularity is where the human mind and then the AI integrate. I mean, how realistic are the things that he's saying in there?
Everybody's going to have an opinion, but I will tell you the following. My ultimate interest is in exactly that. My ultimate concern is in how humanity ultimately crosses that threshold. I am of the belief that in the coming 40 to 50 years, we will do so, and we will see the tippy toes of what is after people, and that the way that transition rolls out will be among the singularly most important things that we do as hairless hominids that are here for a couple, milliseconds in cosmic time. Right. So some folks are of the belief that, maybe in the year 5,000, something crazy like that could occur. Many other folks are of the belief that, so we ran a poll of something like 35 different AI researchers, PhDs from places like Oxford and Duke and all kinds of schools, and essentially asked, when would you suspect that we would get kind of beyond human level intelligence in machines, with like a 90% confidence or something. And the biggest cluster was somewhere around 2065-ish, 2060-ish, et cetera. Maybe it'll be 1,000 years beyond that. In cosmic time, that's meaningless. I think that as a species, we should be, thinking about those things. And ultimately, I have an interview actually at the time of this recording. I don't know when this episode of ours is going to go live, but on Saturday, I have an interview going live on the AI and Business podcast with Stuart Russell, who's one of the sort of most famous voices in artificial intelligence. He's written some great textbooks. He's a big proponent of kind of the dangers of strong artificial intelligence. And I speak with him about the future of AI governance. I'm involved in governance at places like, again, the UN and Interpol, wherever I can be useful, not as a lawyer, but as the market research guy. Again, I stay in my lane, but I'm very interested in where those things will go. So to answer your question, a lot of really sharp folks like Stuart are of the belief that, or Ben Goertzel are of the belief that we should be really considering quite seriously in the next 50 years where the hell things go. Other people think that's absolutely unreasonable and we shouldn't think about it at all. But you know where I stand. So I've talked to both poles and parties for many, many years now. You can go on our podcast. You can find Yoshua Bengio. You can find Ben Goertzel. You can find Nick Bostrom. I mean, you can see in-depth conversations with essentially all the major players in the singularity space. I have my thoughts after speaking with a healthy fist of them over the last 8 or 9 years.
We've gotten a good dose. We've gotten a good dose of seeing something we didn't think could ever happen. Or maybe we thought it could happen, but the last 3 months, right? basically shutting down all the businesses is something that if you 4 months ago said, hey, guess what? Next month, we're closing everything. Like you would have been like, what? That's insane. So to go from that and like our minds to logically like now accept that has happened, I think, to move to something like this is even more believable, right? Like that we could, hey, look, we have to look at this because it's important. If we merge the two things and give, I don't know. I don't even know where we're going, but it can go to a crazy place.
I have 4 TEDx talks. Every single one of them, no exceptions, is about the species dominance question. The species dominance question is as follows. If we are to create something astronomically more intelligent and potentially morally valuable than we, what does that actually imply? So every talk, all 4 of them, are about that same topic. There's a great one called Can AI Make the World a Better Place by Dan Faggella. Something like 1,500 folks in the stands at Cal Poly. Probably the strongest articulation of where I stand on that question.
Love it. We're going to put all this stuff in the notes so we can.
Little sneak peek.
What do you mean?
Just a teaser on that talk. I'm definitely going to go listen to that. But yeah.
I'm going to have to leave you a cliffhanger on this. I mean, the basic premise is the basic premise is that whatever you define to be the moral good, it actually turns out to be really hard to argue against the continuous expansion of machines if they proliferate what that moral good is. And that's one of the 2 major crescendo points that I get to. But again, I'd say a really healthy fistful of the PhD folks that I've talked to about this would concur to a great extent with much of what I'd speak about there. Another half of them would be, by golly, that stuff will never happen. So hey, I could be wasting all my time for all I know, but I've got my cards on the table. I believe there's about a 60-70% chance that within my lifetime we will tippy-toe beyond human potential, and that it will be worth helping to inform that decision if I can at all. In a slightly better way if I want to contribute in some meaningful sense. So, we're contributing to businesses today, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very happy with the work that we do with banks and insurance firms. It's the biggest players these days, so it's good stuff. But ultimately, I think policy is going to be really critical. But everybody listening in right now will think this is sci-fi, and then 25, 30 years from now, I suspect that they will think much less so that's the case.
Well, going back to, our current climate and we need to think about these things ahead of time. I mean, I think anybody that's alive today that's seen what's happened. I mean, the conversation of this happening, went on a few years ago and has been going on, and no one did anything about it. And now we see the results of that. So it's like, so that's where we are right now.
Didn't it go on in November? I thought this went on in November. They had a mock version of this.
I think that this talk has been going on for a while of the possibility of this.
Of a pandemic, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. But
again, there were probably, like, I'm sorry, I chopped you, but just like what you said, there were a group of people that said, that's never going to happen. That can't happen. And then the other group like, whoa. Hey, this is going to happen. We got to be ready. Yeah. Right. And then.
Yeah. I mean, this is not even the weirdest thing that's happened in human history. Right. I mean,
right.
Like Rome fell, right? The sea peoples destroyed most of the civilizations around the Mediterranean. Weirder things have actually, the Ice Age occurred when we were pretty early in our, shaking off of the fur. And so weirder things have actually occurred. The dinosaurs got killed. Y'all remember that? So
they weren't expecting it.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah, they didn't even know what the fuck was going on. So to be frank, I think that these black swans can happen. Does that mean we need to pay attention to all of them? No, I'm not one of those people that says everybody needs to care about what I think is the biggest deal, what I think is the biggest long-term thing to contribute to. I'm not somebody who beats that drum. I think everybody should do what the heart appoints and what the mind appoints. I'm just doing that for myself, and I think it's worth having a couple voices in that camp. And I do my practical work. We deliver value for clients, but I'm ultimately thinking about where is this taking us? Where is this starting to shift the human experience and the future of man-machine interaction, and where does that ultimately go? And I'm always mulling that over at the same time as focusing on the practical and the ROI.
And I think you will, man. I think that's a huge, an awesome internal thing that you got going there to really care about humanity and put that, knowing that this can definitely change humanity in the direction. And I think that you will, especially with that, with the kind of, with the amount of time and effort that you're putting into it. That's incredible. If people want to hear more of Dan, I mean, I want to hear more of Dan. Where can we all get some more Dan in our life?
Sure. I'll leave these for the show notes too. So for your audience, probably the most relevant thing. So if you're interested in the terminology, trends, and use cases of AI in insurance, we have a PDF brief called the AI in Insurance Cheat Sheet. We have one for banking too, but the insurance one is just use cases. Like, what is it doing? What's the impact today? And that's emerj.com/INS1. So INS like insurance and then the number 1. So emerj.com/INS1. That will be a useful resource, I think, for your folks. We have a lot of free resources, but that's probably the coolest one for your audience. And then if people are interested in the impact of AI in different sectors, we have a show called the AI in Business podcast. We also have one called AI in Financial Services, which focuses on just banking, wealth management, and insurance as well. And so people can tune in there. And if they want to find me on Twitter, it's just at Dan Faggella. Pretty easy to find me. But in terms of learning stuff, I think those 2 resources are probably the most fun. Check the podcast out on iTunes, and then otherwise grab the PDF, and hopefully that'll be fun for your audience.
Love it. I'm subscribing to the podcast today.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. This has been way more than I thought. It's awesome.
Well, yeah,
a lot of fun, man.
I had no idea where you guys were going to throw me, and as it turns out, you threw me in every direction a podcast ever thrown me. So congrats to you guys for taking me in 5 directions today.
We
I've
try.
had a podcast with you as well.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, perfect. Dan. Really appreciate it.
And everybody, all the listeners, all of this is in the show notes. Just scroll down and click on all the stuff and be able to get that. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Yes, indeed.
Hey, you've got to check out the Insurance Dudes Inner Circle coming soon, where you get extended interviews as well as live coffee talks in our private Facebook group. Join the mailing list today at theinsurancedudespodcast.com. Hey, thanks for checking out the Insurance Dudes. Hey, please subscribe. We got some really great stuff coming out.